But yeah, fair enough. Fair enough. Speaking of unexamined dystopias, this second show, Millionaire Detective Balance Unlimited. They already use a semicolon between balance and unlimited, but I think they need an EM dash or a hyphen or something between detective and balance. Because then the title actually makes sense. Like, the Millionaire Detective beat Balance Unlimited because he has fucking unlimited credit card balance, whatever.
Um, I guess like insert a Yahtzee Croshaw joke here. This is a series that its first 5 minutes I loved. I was like very very excited for it,
Yeah,
and
I
then
was in when this started.
like it's got really fun character designs, right? It's got a fun, kind of James Bondy OP. It's got, like its sense of humor is for the most part like right the fuck there. Like really early on in the first episode, there's this great little joke where it's a cop show, right? It's a detective show. And they're at the precinct or whatever they have in Japan.
Yeah.
Probably a precinct. And the main character just goes past his desk neighbor who's whose computer starts spewing porn noises, and then he like panics to start to silence them, right? Because he clicked on the wrong ad, or claims that he clicked on the wrong ad or something like that, and was not in fact just watching red tube at work.
It has a lot of energy. The whole show does have a lot of energy. And you can sort of see us rolling towards this one big butt. And I do have a huge ass butt for this show. But maybe to be fully intellectually honest, I don't grade things normally, but to understand my sort of feelings about the show, I would give it maybe a 6.5 or a 7.
I think it does not get that much from me. I think it maybe gets a 5.
I'm talking like American grading system here, dude. Do you know what to do to get a fucking D in our fucking high school?
Oh, okay, sure. All right.
I'm not Anthony fucking Fantano over here, okay? Maybe letters or stars would be better. Point is, this is a show that had potential to do things with a lot of its fucking moving parts, and it just is so unexamined in ways that grate against your brain.
I learned actually why maybe
before.
this is because it is based on a series of novels from, wait for it, the 1970s. So I think its themes are somewhat dated, and they just did not bother to update them whatsoever. But yeah, let's get to the premise here.
That could actually explain so much with what is broken inside this thing, but alright, so a lot of the premise is just caked in the title. The Millionaire Detective. You have your fucking straight man who is a cop who used to be a first-rate cop in, I don't know, elite SWAT corps or whatever, and has been sort of busted down to this local precinct. And you have this, I don't know, Jeff Bezos' nephew.
Who decided one day that he wanted to be a detective.
And if that sounds like a loathsome fuck to you, then you would be correct in the estimation of a lot of people.
His name is Daisuke Kanbei. And he unintentionally feels like a realistic depiction of Bruce Wayne. Like Bruce Wayne,
Yeah.
right? In Earth of 2020, the one that we live in, right? That guy totally fucking be near the top of my list on the guillotine block, right? And so is this asshole, Daisuke Kanbei. Who
The whole like horror comedic gimmick, because this is ultimately like a hybrid comedy crime show, is that this guy expends vast amounts of money solving like, I don't know, mid-tier page 2 crimes, right?
like fairly trivial problems, right? Like I think the first couple episodes they're like doing Vice shit.
And I know from the description in your head you are imagining a great version of this show, and that is why we reviewed it, and that is not what I fucking got here.
It's like just pay taxes. You don't have to be a detective. You'd be making the world such a better place if you just paid fucking taxes. I know you don't.
You sound so cross at this unexamined crass. We like all kinds of crass things. Isn't it fine if that's the joke? And yes, there is a great kind of jokey vibe you can do with this premise, but I guess the thing is that this thing's goals don't go beyond light adventure, but has a premise that invites scrutiny. Like, you think this should be satire?
Yes. Here's the thing. It's coming to the party, and it doesn't want to play. It's showing up with this premise in this time and place, right? It is as if this show does not really recognize when it was released, right? When we as a society are having all these conversations about, the idea of wealth and, like whether it should even be allowed to exist at this point, or at least, I don't know, in the circles I run, we're having conversations about this. I don't know, maybe in the circles you run, you were out
talking about Fight Island, baby, UFC 249. 6 people enter the cage, 3 people leave. This is a thing that...
This bit is not making a whole lot of sense to me, like, as it is happening.
I've made the mistake, and I haven't said context. I'm fucking a local billionaire, whatever the fuck amount of money. Dana White runs UFC, is potentially buying out an island so that people can duke it out in the middle of the fucking Corona, whatever. And if your first thought was Mortal Kombat, yes. And that is a kind of extravagant waste of money that our main character here in The Millionaire Detective, Balance Unlimited.
It's not Millionaire. It's like, it's bigger than that, clearly.
Yeah, this show has not been adjusted for inflation or updated for the kind of current moment. And I guess when I talk about the fucking comedy on this show and why it's not quite landing for me, because I totally get what they're trying to do, right?
Well, what I'd like to do is go into the first set piece that this show has and sort of just kind of take that apart, because it ends up being very... a nice little microcosm of the show's problems.
Are we talking about the bridge or the car banging through the street?
The bridge, yeah.
The bridge, okay.
Well, the car banging through the street into the bridge, that whole, the first episode. Let's just... All right, first episode. There's only 2 out right now, and we're only going to get 2 until July, as this show got ronied just a little bit. So, in the first episode, right, there's this whole thing that happens where... an antisocial cult has put a bomb in a van, right? And 2 kind of hapless would-be jewel thieves jack this van and, kind of lead the police on a merry chase through some ward in Tokyo.
Yeah, that's about right. They have a whole... Again, this amusing sequence where she's trying to convince him to nut up and rob one of these stores. And he keeps saying, not that one. It's got a big guard and...
And it's good. Like, here's the like, there's so much about this that works. Like, this is very well directed, right? It is written as well as it could be. I should mention that this is Tomohiko Ito who directed this, who did the first season of Silver Spoon and as well as Berserk. Not Berserk. What the fuck am I talking? Erased.
Yeah.
2
Erased.
shows that I absolutely loved. Like, Erased was just a fantastic suspense thriller.
It's
Silver Spoon was, if you remember, one of my favorite shows of the last 10 years. He also did the first 2 seasons of Sword Art Online, but like...
We have all sinned in our lives.
It's not his fault. It's not his fault. It's not the director of the anime adaptation's fault.
What would you do for your kids?
Exists.
I'd direct a season of Sword Art Online for my fictional kids.
I'd totally direct a season of Sword Art Online for my fictional kids. So the whole thing is that, this is very confidently put together. It's why it's so jarring, right? When, like, this guy shows up with his wallet and his glasses that, he basically has, Google Glass, except it works, like, he'll fucking tap, his rim, it'll be like, good evening, Batman. And, like, it'll do research for him, do prep time for him. And I think that actually is part of the issue, right? Is that, he's supposed to be, like, this billionaire detective who is nonetheless brilliant. No, I don't necessarily think he's a brilliant detective. I think he has a pair of glasses that do research for him.
Dude, this show is basically the extrapolation of that joke everyone made about Batman's power being fucking money. And it doesn't go further than that fucking idea. And in terms of his, like, brilliance, for the show to work, I think I need this guy to be either 20% smarter or 80% dumber. I need it to either really portray this level of competence that they want me to believe he has, and it's cool in this sort of Sherlock Holmesian way, or do it, you cowards, make him the loathsome fuck I want in my heart.
Yeah, I would agree with that.
The whole show is sort of on the level of, isn't this slick and cool?
Well, what ends up happening, right, is that he ends up being written as not Sherlock Holmes smart, but as Sherlock smart. which is to say his intelligence is a superpower. He's smart, so he invented a, pair of, Google Glass, like shades that do detective work for him. He's smart. So, he knows, all of these languages, like specifically like Arabic when talking to this one, prince or whatever of not UAE, right? He's smart, so he has a bat cave, right? That kind of,
Oh, dude,
Sherlock
I can't wait
smart.
until we get a scene in the show with angles. Remember Sherlock and angles?
Ugh, yes. Not very fondly. Now I can mention one of my favorite fucking things ever and one of my favorite fucking characters ever, Ed Elric, right? One of the best written smart characters in anything, honestly. And just the difference between a smart character written as a wizard versus a smart character who literally is a fucking wizard for all intents and purposes, still written as a person who actually is very intelligent.
Yeah.
The pains that they actually go to in, say, Full Metal Alchemist, right? To sort of work out how Ed has plausibly deduced something, right? And, yes, he has vague knowledge or whatever, and I feel like that is leaned on a whole lot, when writing a smart character, for TV or whatever. It's just like, oh, I know this because I know this thing, right? He's well versed in chemistry and shit, right? Because it's an alchemist. What I'm thinking of just off the top of my head is when he figures out how he's going to beat the first greed, right? Is because he figures like, oh yeah, that your ultimate shield, right? That's carbon, right? I can just transmute that, no problem.
Yeah, to which Greed one might shout, "No fair, no fair."
No fair. Right? So that's like actually smart, right? And then Sherlock smart, right? Which is this guy, who I guess knows, whatever fucking language or, I guess invented these glasses, right? So whereas, he has a superpower,
Sherlock's
or he is
smart.
a wizard.
This never happened
Sherlock's
in Sherlock.
smart.
It didn't happen in this show. But if I were to go for a trademarked Denard metaphor, I want you to imagine your hapless hero handcuffed. And he looks down on those handcuffs and smirks. Ah, obviously these are a pair of Baghdadian Type 2s. And he claps his hands together twice, and the cuffs just shatter into thousands of pieces of ruined metal.
Exactly. It is the writers using his intelligence to cheat rather than to facilitate the forward progression of a scene.
Like
right?
If a guy smarts at a problem and the sort of mood undercurrent is time to move this bitch along.
It's like the same sort of thing when you've got like, the hacker who, clickety clackety I'm in, right? Like
But people praise Mr. Robot, and I would be fascinated to see how they avoid that shit.
I know that it's very well directed. I watched a couple of the first episodes. It's like one of those shows that instead of that show, I watched anime. So it's, near as I can tell, is very good.
Cool.
But we weren't even planning on getting into this aspect of the show. We were mostly going to talk about how can you include just references to obscene levels of wealth and then not actually talk about it because, like, it's fucking 2020. Are you blind? But no, this is another issue that this show has, that this guy comes off like a total fucking ponce, like no matter what the fuck he's doing, whether it be, deducing or just doing disgusting displays of wealth in places.
It's kind of crazy, but the thing that doesn't work about the Millionaire Detective is the Millionaire Detective.
Both aspects, honestly. He's kind of just a pretty dick. Dick, because that's like the detective, slang for detective.
Like, we were headed towards, like, talking about the fucking bridge earlier, right?
Yeah, go for it.
The key part of that set piece is he uses his money brain to get rid of all the cop cars and civilians as he chases this thing. And then he has the fucking bridge come up while these guys are trying to drive over it using money-mancy. Can we call it that? Money-mancy? Money alchemy?
Good evening, Batman superpowers. I don't know. That's a mouthful. As much as I enjoy it, that's just too much.
Actually,
of a
send this
mouthful.
cash. Let's just call it equivalent exchange. He uses equivalent exchange.
No, that's giving the show too much credit. It's comparing it to a far superior series. or inviting comparison to a far superior cities. He uses money powers. Let's call it money powers.
So he money powers is this bridge up, and I had this like smile during the early part of the episode that just sort of flattens out to a straight line at this moment.
Oh yeah, and then the main character, Kato, who is, I like this guy, right? He actually does the real work of getting this bomb off the bridge, getting like the remaining the woman driving the car out of the car because she doesn't even know that there's a bomb in there, right? Because she jacked this car, if you remember, right? So he actually does the dirty work here, right? And is left hanging off the edge of this drawbridge, right? Mm-hmm. At which point, like a Daisuke, kind of just walks up to him, stands above him, and watches him fall 50 feet into the water, which, like, I think it actually was probably more than 50 feet. It was probably even twice or three times that.
People
I think he should probably be fucking dead. Yeah. So I'll whatever. Artistic license, it didn't kill him. Fine. In this universe, dropping that far into water doesn't. Whatever. I'm not gonna nitpick over that. But like, I've received zero fucking incentive to feel any sort of positive feelings towards this character, other than the fact that, like, he's hot or something.
If a Hellboy monkey with a gun popped out of a bush and shot him once in the gut in the start of the next episode, and it was just 10 minutes of him expiring on the ground, I would feel nothing.
Yeah, I hate this douchebag.
And I know what you're saying. I know it's coming. I was gonna say it. Isn't that the joke? Here's the thing. You've basically built what in the current moment should be like a satirical structure. But the joke is basically on like it's instead of satire, it's like a Mad TV sketch where it's just the laughter is really just a surface level dissonance. They haven't actually examined or commented upon or twisted anything. It's just, yeah, it is something sort of innately funny about a guy lifting a bridge with cash to stop this petty crime that's all right. It's a bigger crime. Have they thought about what that means now? How that scans differently now? How you could do more than what you're doing, or how it could be less than it originally was in this context? Not like a fucking bit. Yeah, it's like this willful ignorance on the show's part. I mean, like, maybe this show is just a victim of airing in 2020 rather than like 1979. I think in 1979 this show comes off as kitschy and fun. But it's 2020 and Jeff Bezos still won't pay his fucking taxes. So like, here I am wanting to fucking chop this fucking asshole's head off every time he fucking appears in frame, right? And there's this bit in the second episode, right, where he is confronted by Kato, the other protagonist, the human being, workaday detective guy in the stairwell, right, where the guy calls him out for being a dick, right? And I'm expecting in this scene for Daisuke to give him his whole thesis, right? So that we learn something about his character. Maybe he makes some oddly salient devil's advocate ass point here. Dude, yeah, if there was something behind the series that just had some batshit Thomas Hobbes, this is what society needs to function kind of thing behind it, okay, at least it had its chance. Angle, right? It had its chance, and then he just kind of like smirks at him, and that's all we get. Because ultimately, smirks at him and then mentions, this was him owning him, was just him reciting, was just Daisuke here reciting the reason that, Kato got demoted, which is, I think, in a tense hostage situation, he accidentally pulled the trigger, right? Which, yeah, that's something to perhaps be ashamed of or something like that, but it's not a refutation of his point, nor is it a thesis on your part as to, why it is okay for you to, go around hoarding all of this wealth and using it, right, on such petty fucking things as drug busts. It would be like if you were telling someone to stop selling drugs and they said, you cheated on your wife. Yes, exactly. It's bizarre. It's bizarre. No, it's
it's kind of human in its way, right? But this like it's exactly the sort of thing that I would expect almost from some fucking asshole billionaire playboy like Daisuke here, right? Except the show is on his side.
That is fucking crazy.
It's like reading fucking Twilight here, right? Where like the character of Bella Swan, right, would be absolutely fascinating if the series was aware of kind of how shitty she was.
I'm honestly surprised someone hasn't cashed in on Yandere Bella Swan yet.
Right? It would be like she would be an immensely compelling character if there was like 15% more self-awareness that went into like the writing of that book, right? Or the writing of those books, right?
Yeah.
So it's the same kind of thing with Daisuke here. Just like if the show was just a little bit more self-aware, and I know it's not stupid, right? Because occasionally it'll give
there are
us
little
like
character things that work with like the little sequences they make with the side characters. I don't know, like almost
there are
everything
these really
they
smart
do with
gags.
one-off people works more than what they're trying to do with their main people. I feel like I'm watching fucking SmackDown, and
yeah, for real, it's not a bad comparison there. It's like SmackDown or like Kakegurui a little bit.
yeah.
I haven't watched much of Kakegurui though, so like I'm not gonna talk too much shit, but like it just kind of comes off to me as just going for prison school heat, and it's still just like ludicrously rich people doing ludicrously rich things at one another, and I find it difficult to care.
A lot of these shows and comics, especially in this sort of adventure niche, so much rides on knowing what you're doing with the main dude, because these shows are married at the hip to how much you like or enjoy what the main fucker is doing. And it's kind of sad because the show looks good. It has fun little side plots and characters. There are some funny beats, there's funny direction. It understands the structure of a joke, but it just, I guess it's just that fucking middle brow thing where they're stuff that could be happening. I guess there's also a tonal dissonance thing, because serious things do happen and then it's put up against fucking hello Batman
and then he shows up in a fucking attack helicopter. Like,
I gave up on the attack helicopter. That sounds like I'm not waiting for when this show fucking comes back.
Yeah, no, these are going to be the only 2 episodes of this show that I watch. I just fucking pay your taxes. It will solve so many more fucking problems than you going around, chasing down fucking drug dealers. Honest to fucking God.
Yeah.
I don't know. Maybe they're not having the same conversations about wealth over in Japan that we are, here in the States. So maybe, I'm giving this show shit for, like
I don't even
not
think
having
you need
been
to
made
have
in
like
America.
the specific fucking social problem for the whole thing here to be irksome. Like, I feel like if I made a fucking show about a Colombian drug lord, I have no real attachment to the situation, and he was just a sort of wacky, cool dude. And people would pay like lip service to questioning, like, hey, should you really be selling that coke to children? And he'd be like, you cheated on your wife. And then the show just moseyed along. I would have some serious fucking questions.
So here's like a thing, and this is anecdotal, right? I haven't looked at any numbers or anything. This is just what I have read, right? Is that this series already has quite a fan base, and it has such a fan base because, and you can fucking just finish this sentence for me, people think he's hot. Now, there's been some amount of conversation, right, about the sort of problematic nature of hating things that teenage girls like, right? It's and I'm aware of this, right? I try to factor in like, oh, am I just down on this because it seems like something that would produce quote unquote fangirls, right? It's why I give it's why like I recognize that like One Direction, right, was like way the fuck outside of my demographic, but ultimately it seemed like pretty much harmless to me. So like whatever, right? So, like, I will give a thing, right, that seems like it is either aimed at, like, that teenage girl audience or, just has that sort of following to it, right? I'll try to give it whatever credit I can and try to sort of set aside my biases when looking at it, right? But occasionally, I cannot do that. Occasionally, it spits off the balcony at its fans. Occasionally, it beats Rihanna half to death in the car. Occasionally, it brings to the table this fucking discussion about wealth, right? And how, like, if it is, even correct to have any wealth, or to just have, like, the fucking ludicrous amount of wealth that, this character has, and then not have that conversation. So fuck you if you like this because he's hot. Watch another show with a different hot guy.
Yeah, and I honestly wouldn't even be worried about falling into the fucking trap of criticizing something aimed at teenage girls, because everything that's broken about this isn't really, at least in terms of what we've talked about here, the things that are fucking wrong with it aren't the things that pull people in that way.
I know, I just kind of hate it when
all the shit that's wrong with this is distracting. Like, I don't know, if he was my given sexual fixation strutting about and I watched shows for that, I feel like I would be too distracted by all the stupid shit running on to keep a semi-child. That's why I couldn't watch any of the fucking Charlie's Angels movies.
Perhaps. I think it's easy to fall into a trap there where, you're trying to, where you base sort of criticism off of, like, if only people were like me. But, like, I do get what you're saying.
True that.
One sort of pet peeve I have when, talking about things and, like, giving criticism on things, and then the rebuttal is, yeah, but, character X is really hot, right? I want to fucking wring these people's necks whenever I fucking hear this thing.
It kind of makes you wonder if people could have gotten through the room if Tommy Wiseau had abs.
Well, they did get through the room. I've watched it like something like half a dozen times in my life. I've gotten, like, the room is... I mean, I get what you're saying, but, like, perhaps a better example would be...
I guess my point about
El Gatos.
This show, at the end of the day...
Los Gatos.
...is that watch for dissonance you're writing, and pay your fucking taxes.
And pay your fucking taxes.
Pay your goddamn taxes.
Like... You shouldn't even be allowed to have the kind of wealth that you have, but at the very least, pay your fucking taxes.
I hope that Elon Musk's fucking rockets work so I can shoot him into fucking space. Anyway, this is Weeaboo Hell. It's Weeaboo Hell. Vote. National Poetry Month was pretty much cancelled by virus, but I wrote a haiku anyway. Pay your taxes, Jeff. No, a divorce does not count. You bald, walking leech. Thank you, patrons of the arts.